Denver in Game 6 and advances to the second round. CBS NBA analyst John Gonzalez in with reaction. And John, I'm interested in your point of view on this one because at surface level coming into this one, Minnesota's down their 4 key contributors, their best player and a number of those at the top of this depth chart, and still they dictate terms for what felt like the whole 48 here. How are they able to do so?
Yeah, the assumption was, oh, well, the Nuggets, this is going to be a 3-1 comeback for them, right? Because no Ant, he hyperextended his knee. No Dante DiVincenzo, he's out for the rest of the postseason and almost certainly all of next year with an Achilles. And then Ayo Dosunmu, who had stepped into that starting lineup and was excellent off their bench, but was sort of an emergency starter because of the other 2 guys going down. He had a calf injury, so he doesn't play either. I was thinking, man, they're cooked. Where are they going to get offense from? Well, here comes Jaden McDaniels. And for people who don't know, Jaden McDaniels is one of the most underrated two-way players in the NBA. He's an unbelievable defender, but he doesn't get enough credit offensively because on this team, he frequently doesn't have to be the main scorer, but tonight he was. He goes for a 32-point double-double. He had big play after big play at the defensive end. He absolutely locked down Jamal Murray, who had one of his worst games at the worst possible time tonight. And then, other contributions where you have Terrence Shannon, who steps into the starting lineup. He goes for 24 points. This is a guy who frequently does not play, who is out of the rotation. He had a start tonight. Yes, he needed 20 shots to get those 24 points, but just 1 turnover, had the ball in his hands a lot. This was a remarkable effort by the Wolves, who a lot of people, including me, counted out, thought they're done. And not only are they not done, but they're moving on. And man, the Nuggets have to be stunned right now.
We will put them on the same court as the San Antonio Spurs here shortly. Denver certainly begs a couple questions here as well. And I'm glad you bring up Jamal Murray, 4 of 17 at the offensive end. But other end, even more telling for me, especially late in this game, it appeared that Minnesota was hunting the matchup, looking for Murray, whoever had the ball in their hands, going straight at him. I don't know if it was a lack of urgency, certainly not a lack of effort. What did you see from Murray tonight?
Nothing good. I mean, yeah, they were absolutely hunting him on the defensive end. There's no doubt about that. And that's somewhat to be expected. Look, it's also not his fault entirely at the defensive end because this is a bad defensive team, the Nuggets. But on the offensive end, this is the #1 ranked offensive team in the NBA during the regular season. And the Wolves should really get some credit here because all 3 games in Minnesota, the Wolves held the Nuggets to under 100 points. And in this game, when Jamal Murray and the Nuggets are facing elimination, normally you get your best Jamal Murray. Tonight, you got a terrible offensive Jamal Murray. Not that I'm giving him a pass at the defensive end, but the offensive end is really where it's inexcusable because he can't go 4 for 17 in a win or go home game. Now they're going home. Joker showed up. He had a good second half, 28, almost a triple-double, almost a 28-point triple-double. Cam Johnson showed up on the offensive end. But Jamal Murray, who had his best season this year, was an all-star, is going to make All-NBA. That's a really bad time for him to have one of his worst games of the season. And then Christian Brown, he's had an awful year. He gave them absolutely nothing. This is one of the best teams on paper that Nikola Jokic has ever had assembled around him. Now, in the same way that they didn't have, the Wolves didn't have Ant and Dante DiVincenzo and Ayo, the Nuggets, it should be noted, did not have Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson. Those are 2 big blows, 2 guys who they really could have used tonight and in this series. But if you're Nikola Jokic, you come into the season thinking, oh man, this is the best team I've ever had assembled around me, and now you're a first round out. That is hugely disappointing.
And I'm glad we're looking at this graphic here because this is championship DNA at its core, whether it be Joker or Murray or, as you alluded to, some pieces that were not there. A first round exit is something different. It leaves a taste in your mouth, especially when the expectation is that of dictating series and dictating who the league runs through, how we felt about these Nuggets not too long ago. You said it, 96, 96, 98, and 114 offensively in these losses. Where did you see them fall flat of the team that was scoring 122 per on a nightly basis? Or is it just a simple fact of defensive intensity ramps up and they didn't match it offensively?
Yeah, but both of so many different things. I mean, for sure, you have to give the Wolves credit at the defensive end because they have so many different guys that they can throw at you. Now, Ant, again, out. That doesn't help. But Jaden McDaniels is, I don't know if he's going to make all defense, but he's an all defensive caliber player. Rudy Gobert, much maligned Rudy Gobert, right? I mean, people love to dunk on that guy about his shortcomings and his deficiencies. He's an excellent defensive player, multi-time defensive player of the year. And in this series, even though tonight, again, Joker goes for almost a triple-double, it doesn't look like he played great defense on Joker. He played great defense on Joker, and they really made the Nuggets work. But then, as I mentioned, not having Aaron Gordon, that's a killer. Not having Peyton Watson, that's a killer. Jamal Murray, not having his best game at the worst possible moment. Cam Johnson, despite the fact that he went for 27 points tonight, he was super uneven, not only this season, but in this series. And I mentioned Christian Brown. He's a starter for this team. They've gotten nothing from him all season long. And tonight, 3 points, 1 of 4. He was invisible. You had so many guys no-show in this thing. So it's really kind of surprising because I thought the Nuggets had a chance to make a run. When the postseason alignment happened, I thought, oh man, this is tough for the Wolves. They've gone to back-to-back Western Conference Finals, and they got the Nuggets in the first round. That's probably going to be a first-round exit for them. And not only was it not, they overcome 2 critical injuries to 2 of their 5 starters. Tonight, they show up all wearing Dante DiVincenzo jerseys, and I thought, okay, like this is some good team unity here. These guys are not giving up, and they certainly did not, and they're moving on, and they deserve it.
Doing it for Rudiger, like they're walking into walking into the coach's office, putting the jerseys down. They were inspired tonight, and we will get to that conference semifinal matchup in a moment here. But I feel like there is a big conversation sort of staring us in the eyes when we look at the Western Conference side of this playoff bracket, and it's the question of whose league is this, and the changing of the guard as we don't see the Stephs. Yes, we see Bron for how much longer. KD has missed the last few. It's an interesting moment right now in the NBA because Joker had stated his claim through all that he's accomplished, the championship to fully mint it. And then SGA does what he did a year ago. We also now get to see Victor Wembanyama try and add a championship pedigree to his name now. Does this first round exit essentially pass that torch once again to one of the younger of those 2 I mentioned?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Nikola Jokic, for my money, is still the best player in the world at the moment, but that's changing, right? And he's going to finish top 3 in the MVP race, and that's a different conversation than who's the best player. But yes, right now, if you're the Spurs, you're thinking, oh man, we don't have to face Joker. Here come the Wolves who are hurt. There's a chance that Ant could be back for that series, but they're not again not going to have Dante DiVincenzo. And even if Ant comes back, what kind of Ant are you going to get? They're limited. The Spurs are going to be the heavy favorites in that. And then all of a sudden, they're on a collision course with the defending champion, Oklahoma City Thunder. So you've got 2 of the top 3 MVP candidates, the reigning MVP against the defensive player of the year, the first guy who's ever won that award in unanimous fashion, who looks unbelievable. The Spurs are super deep at both ends of the floor, as are the Nuggets. That could be an absolutely gangbusters Western Conference Finals. And then whoever comes out of that will be the favorite to win it against whoever comes out of the East. So yes, it does feel like that. And look, this happens, right? The NBA is cyclical. The old guard can't be on top forever. It's always going to be refreshed with these new young players. It was last season with Oklahoma City, and now we're getting some more of that with the Spurs and Wemby.
All right, let's get back to the here and now and putting focus on the Spurs and the Minnesota Timberwolves. That is our next matchup in that Western Conference semifinal. What do you see when you put those 2 on the same court together? Because you just made a great point about against a Nikola Jokic, the defensive effort against the length of Victor Wembanyama and the youth of the San Antonio Spurs is certainly going to be interesting for a week plus time.
Yeah, but I mean, the Wolves are obviously a team that aren't going to lay down, right? I mean, they could have very easily, you lose your best player and your starting point guard, and you could have just said, oh man, this is it for us. Instead, they really fought, and they're moving on for a reason. They do have some really good defenders. Now, Rudy Gobert, as I mentioned, he really made Nikola Jokic work. But there's even when you're making Nikola Jokic work, he still almost goes for a triple-double tonight, right? And the same thing can be said of Wemby. He's similarly unguardable. They're going to try a bunch of different looks. Maybe they sometimes throw a Jaden McDaniels at him or Julius Randle or a Naz Reid, and they're going to use up all their fouls. It's impossible to guard that guy. The difference here is that I think that the Spurs are obviously a much better 2-way team. This is going to be a bigger challenge for the Wolves because the Spurs can also defend. Earlier in this series against the Nuggets, Jaden McDaniels made that comment about, well, we don't care. Those guys don't guard. Talking about the Nuggets, none of those guys guard. And I got the Nuggets a little upset, but he was right about that. The Nuggets don't guard. And you saw that tonight where they give up 24 points to